set up the room. So let me pray for us, please. Father, we thank you very much for a hectic day. I've been on a plane all day and trying to do technology, and neither of those I'm gifted at. Fortunately, the pilot was gifted at the flying part, so I'm here, and the tech is just going to have to be in your hands, and hopefully we'll still get something good out of this. So watch over me today and help all of us stretch a little bit in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So even as I'm praying, the technology has changed and made things worse for me. Unbelievable.
You don't see anybody in the waiting room, do you?
I don't. It's not coming up as that anyway.
Okay, cool. Oh, I got it. It shows up on mine. I just wanted to make sure.
Rob said he can't get in. I don't want to stress you out.
Did you go to Tuesday school and copy that link? I mean, everybody else got in. I don't know. Just that link. Maybe Tuesday school hit that link for May 11th. And it's going to be right in. I can't do anything else. Sorry, Rob. All right. Anybody who knows Rob can call him and tell him how to get in. So, talk about
some more of those wine chips.
What?
Yeah.
They show up in the Bible, giants in the Bible. I know. We're talking about giants. What are they doing there?
Oh, and I can't hear you. Okay. Okay, I'm listening to a Sunday school lesson. Okay.
We're going to talk about, let's see, vocalic interpretation and documentary hypothesis and good grief, I don't even know all the other things. Oh, hot chicks are showing up in this thing. Sorry if anybody's offended by that phraseology, but beautiful women and the desire for them and how the end of the world comes because of all this. So it's gonna be bad. So we're gonna jump in as much as we can. This is Genesis 6. If you have a Bible, we're actually doing a Bible study today. So check this out. Genesis chapter 6, I wanna read it, but apparently Adam is not the only one who is causing a problem in the Bible. We got other people that are causing a problem. Genesis chapter 6. Here are the verses. If you have your notes, you'll see them. I've printed everything this time. I went all out, so you don't have to have anything. It should all be there. Genesis 6, 1 through 4 says, when men began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit will not contend with man forever, for he is mortal. His days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. All right, now, if you read that, having never read that before, you've got to be a little weirded out and not have a clue what in the world is going on. So let's back up. Let's make sure that we're all on the same page. Travis, are you still with me? No. Are you still there, Travis?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. You're my only link to knowing whether anybody can understand what I'm saying or not. So I don't know. Normally I would have people stop me and say, hey, we don't know what's going on. So you're my only hope there. Like Ben Kenobi.
I was just thinking that. You're my only hope.
All right, so here's our history, okay? So we've got Adam and Eve. What we've talked about Adam and Eve is that they are a couple that is created in a garden, but we've called this garden, or the Gan of Adon, garden is the temple of the Lord, the sanctuary, the place where God dwells, okay, where God and mankind come together. We did this last week, right? This is where heaven is. This is where earth is, and this is the garden, okay? The Gan, the Eden, the place of fertility. This is the sanctuary. This is where God and man come together, and they walk and they talk together, okay? Later on in history, it's going to be called a temple. Well, later it's going to be called a tabernacle, then a temple. And later on after that, we're going to come And we're going to find out that Jesus says he is the place where the garden is. He is the dwelling place of God on earth. Okay, all of that should be ancient history now. It is ancient history. It's like way primeval history, in fact. Okay, we talked about these different books, these different chapters, and where they fit in the timeline. And most people say that they're created by Moses. Okay, so that Moses would have written this particular text, Genesis. When I say most people, I mean most people in our circles, right? In the evangelical world kind of circles. Not most people. Okay, most people don't have any clue about this. Most scholars don't think Moses wrote it. Okay, so Moses lives, let's say, 1450, conservatively. Let's give ourselves a timeline here. Okay, here's you and me. Here's the cross. Okay, here is Moses. Okay, let's just pretend for a moment that Adam is back there. At least this event as it's being described is being described by Moses. He's talking about Adam way back when. Okay. Now, what I've said, of course, is that Adam and Eve are symbols of priests. I before E, priests, right? So I'm saying that Adam and Eve aren't necessarily like the first historical couple, at least not in the story. That's not what's being designed. That's not what it's trying to do. Okay, whether they are or not is a question you have to ask anthropologists and stuff like that. I just don't know. I'm not a historian, but the literature is designed to do something different. So we think that Moses, evangelicals will say Moses is writing this. Moses is living about 1450. Adam is living, well, not, right? Way back. It's primeval history. It's primordial history. It's a history before history. Okay, it's the archetypal mythological world that happens beforehand. Okay, so this is Moses, but what I've been arguing is that really the text is probably written way back here. Moses may have written some things, he might have a few fragments of stuff, and he may have grabbed older fragments, but there's so much work being done that it's really not written till later on. It's starting to be compiled into something, but what you have today happens more like right here. And so the first thing I put on your list is what we call documentary hypothesis, okay, which is just this idea in our head that different texts were written by different people over long periods of time. Okay, specifically 4 groups of people, one called a J or a Yahwist, one called an Elohist, one called a Deuteronomist, and one called a priestly writer. Okay, now, this theory is mostly done. Most people don't hold to this theory anymore. Okay, but there's something to it. So they don't hold to it exactly like this anymore, because when you throw out a theory, then you start perfecting the theory, and then you get better at the theory, and then it keeps growing. But the fact that there are different authors is very true. So originally, this is like a 10th century text, the Yahwist. Yahwist is called the Yahwist because when he talks about God, he says Yahweh a lot. The Elohist is called Elohist because when he says God, he uses the word Elohim. These are just 2 Hebrew words, one for God and one for the name of this, the covenantal name of this God. Okay, and this is probably like 9th century. Let's just say about 850. Remember, on our timeline, here's where we're talking about. Remember, from the cross on, we've got, year 100, 200, 200, this way, all the way back to 1450. But this would be like, let's say like 950. Okay, so somewhere around the time, right before David, maybe, during the time of the monarchy, this is being written. The Elohist is writing some things a little bit later than that. Okay, and then it's going to continue. The priestly tribe may be as late as the 5th century, like the 400s. Okay, so you have an idea of when this is being written, and it matters when it's being written because they're telling you the stories for different reasons. Okay, if I'm living back here, I'm telling the story for one reason. If I'm living here, I'm telling you the story for a different reason. Now, it's possible that they were telling the story back here for a reason, and then as time went by, they kept altering the story a little bit, changing it, adding things for a while, so that they could tell the story differently for a group later on. I mean, this is pretty normal, right? if I'm a historian and I want to tell a story about the past, I'm going to tell this story for my particular congregation, not for the congregation 30 years ago or 100 years ago. I'm going to update it. I'm going to tell you it for different reasons. So what I wrote on your paper said something like, there's a J text, there's a P text, and maybe there's some inserted text. Okay? I don't want us to get too deep into this. I just want you to be aware of the complicated nature of hermeneutics. Okay? Hermeneutics is interpreting. Okay, so we're trying to interpret things from their perspective. I want to know what they're saying about all of this. Okay? Or I want to know what they're saying about all of this and why. So it may be that a Yahwist has written verses 1 through 4 of Genesis, and then someone else came along and added verses 5, 6, 7, etc. Okay, and then someone maybe put all of these together. So a lot of people would argue that the Yahwist is the author of verses 1 through 4, and a lot of people would argue that the priestly tribe, the priestly author, is the author.
We're doing 1 through 4 in chapter 6, not 1 through 4. Or 1 through, we're still in chapter 6 right now.
Chapter 6, verses 1 through 4 is all I'm talking about. Now, this definitely shows up if we're talking about like chapters 1 and 2 and 3. It's all over the place. There's all kinds of inserts. Okay, so there's a big difference. Like I'm arguing that the priests are telling you this story for a reason. That's why they're making Adam and Eve into this story. Okay, but in here, it's very possible that just verse 3 is an additional priestly one. Okay, now, most of you are arguing, who in the world cares about this? Okay, 5 minutes of your time is all I wanted, right? I want you to be aware of the complexity. That's it. Okay? It doesn't matter to me whether you get all of the stuff in here, but notice that one author has a couple of verses, another author inserts another verse in here, and then continues with what the other author had all along. When you insert something, you change the story, right? If I come along and put a not, the word not, into any story, I've completely changed the story. It's completely reversed now, right? Remember, I can't hear you, so you just got to nod your head sometimes. Okay, good. All right, my own people are at least. I can hear you guys at least, so that's good. Okay, does this make any sense at all? The big point here is that stories evolve over time, right? That there's going to be a change in the story. It's going to consistently be moving. There's no such thing as an original text. Okay, it's impossible. That's just a very simplistic mindset. The original text is not even a text. It's an oral story that people are telling, and then somebody else adds some other oral pieces, and then somebody writes down something, and somebody changes what was written down to something else. And then another tribe, 20 miles away is going to change it a little bit more until we eventually get way down here, and then we get some sort of a final form that doesn't change very much anymore, that Jesus probably knew about. Okay, that's the one that he's probably reading. Something after the 400s. Okay, all right. But even then, we don't have an original form. We have translations even then. So we're going to talk about the difference between the Masoretic text, which, by the way, is not the original Hebrew text. That's going to come out much later. It's going to come out way over here. Okay, the Masoretes are going to come out later on. But there's going to be a Hebrew text, and there's going to be a Greek text. That's going to matter. Because Jesus and Paul, guess what they're quoting most of the time? The Greek text. Why? That's just the common one that they're using all the time. Okay? So we've got to be aware of all of this. Does this make sense? We can jump into the next section. Okay. So that's the higher criticism. Now, where does this phrase, you guys all got this?
Yeah.
You understand higher criticism? It's, easy as can be, right? Okay, good. All right. Back up.
The Library of Alexandria was a lot of the translations are out of the Greek done there, and that's kind of off.
I don't know where they were done, but we certainly found a lot there.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. So finding libraries buried in the dirt and things like that is the greatest thing that can ever happen to us. Right. You've seen just in the last couple of weeks, people were jumping down to a cave in Qumran, and they found a whole bunch of new things. Did anybody see that? That's like the coolest discoveries ever. Oh, Josh has got something. The complete Gospels. Oh, is this the new stuff that we just found? They just found it 2 weeks ago, and you already have it there?
Yeah, I just published the book on the new stuff that we found.
Josh has no ability to talk to me. Sorry, I have no volume here. I don't know why.
He said he just published the book on the new stuff that we found.
Oh, Josh did? Josh just published?
Yep, he did.
Yeah, 26 years old, no Hebrew or Greek or Aramaic training, but yep, good job, Josh. You rock. All right. So, oh, by the way, for Dr. Blaze here, last week, Tohu Vabohu, if you're still on here. I can't see, but Tohu Vabohu, there it is for you, if you can read it. Is it on there? Yeah, like you could read that. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next section. How does this show up? Where does this phrase occur? What we're talking about is that very first one in chapter 6. It says, when men began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God. Okay, now I don't know whether to make it a big G or a little g there, because we don't know. But it shows up in different places. So as you hear it now, sons of God, what do you think it must be? You can't answer. It's a rhetorical question, so don't answer. Okay, but think to yourself, what are the sons of God?
Kind of angelic being.
Okay, now what makes you think that though? Based on what? Like you're reading along, is there anything in here that tells you it's an angel or an angelic being? Probably other information that's filtering in from the past or wherever.
Yeah.
Or by the title that I've called this, angelic warrior giant things, right? Okay, which is a possibility. All right, so we don't know what the sons of God are, but they show up in different places, and I don't know that I've given you that in your.
They also show up in ancient Mesopotamian texts.
They do, and we're going to talk a lot about that. But let's figure out where it shows up in the Bible first. Okay, let's stay there. So the phrase "sons of Elohim," right? This is Elohim. Sons of Elohim shows up in Job a lot. Well, not a lot, 3 times. Okay, so if you look at Job 1:6, you're going to see B'nai, let's see here. Wow, that was bad. Elohim. Okay, you're going to see B'nai Elohim. So, okay, so sons, right? Benjamin, like sons of. Anytime you see the word Ben, it's sons of Elohim. Okay, so it's just a filial word. That's all it means. It's a family word. Sons, you know what a son is, right? So the sons of God, a son of Elohim. In Job, it's going to show up in the same way, B'nai Elohim, 3 different times. Actually, I think it shows up B'nai Ha Elohim. This is the word the. So you take this and you put it over here. The sons. No one cares about this, right? The sons of God. All right. It shows up in Job 1:6, in Job 2:1, and Job 38:7. Okay, with and without this definite article. So the sons of God or sons of God. And then it shows up in Deuteronomy 32:8, the B'nai Elohim. Look at Deuteronomy. If you've got a Bible, go ahead and look at it. Yes, I fully expect this class to take 2 weeks, by the way. 32:8. And I did promise you that Dr. Dalrymple was going to be here this week, and I apologize. We're going to blame him because he's right there. He's sitting right there. I can see his little square, but he won't come on to show his face. But he was busy, and he didn't think he could make it. So I did all this stuff, and we're going to try and talk next week or the week after, as soon as we're able to. So Deuteronomy 32:8 says this in my NIV: when the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided all mankind, he set up boundaries for the peoples according to the numbers of the sons of, here's where I would get participation. The sons of what?
Israel.
The sons of Israel is what everyone says here, right? Probably. Okay, but that's not exactly what it does say. So it says B'nai Elohim and B'nai El in 2 Dead Sea Scrolls. We were just talking about the Qumran scrolls. That's Dead Sea Scrolls. And you probably don't care which one, so I won't tell you. But mostly it comes up as Angelou Theo, okay, in Greek text. That is the angels of God. So it's the angels of God in this case. And sometimes in the Septuagint, okay, remember this is how we say Septuagint, 70. because of the myth behind how it was created. By the way, there's not one Septuagint either. Like there's one Hebrew Bible. There's no such thing as those things. There's lots of different Greek versions. But some of the Septuagintal versions show up as sons of God instead of sons of Israel. So the question is, what is, according to the number of the sons of God, he's giving them territories and he's setting it up according to something. According to either the fathers, the Israel's kings or something like the son, whatever the sons of God are, or the sons of Israel, depending on your translation. And some say one thing, some say the other. So we don't really know. But there is an idea, and it still travels into today, that different gods have different territories. So that, you have the God of Israel, and you also have the God of Babylonia, right? Assyria, Mesopotamian Valley. Well, that's all of that area. Persia, whatever. The different areas, you're going to have different gods. Even really local, like, Jacob wrestles with some god on the Jabbok River. Maybe it's a very local god. Okay, what's going on with all of that stuff? So we don't know what this is exactly, but I just wanted you to be aware of it, the complexity of it. And then in Psalm 29, we have B'nai Elim. So it's just taking out the this part, Elim. It still says sons of God. And then B'nai Elyon. You've heard Elyon, right? That's a completely different word. Elyon, which, you don't care about writing Hebrew. Elyon, right? You know Elyon? There's a great song Amy Grant sang, Michael Card's version of it, right? It starts with El Shaddai, but later on in there it says Elyon, Adonai, right? Remember all that? Okay, so it's just another one of the words for Most High or God of the Mountains, something like that. All right, Psalm 89:6, sons of Elim again, and then there's a Bar Elohim, if you know your Aramaic and Daniel. That's what we've got to go on. Okay, so I just wanted you to have them in case you want to go back and do your own study of what's going on here. So here's the three views, okay? 3 views of what are these sons of God. By the way, there are many views as you want to come up with, but these are the 3 that traditionally are spoken of. The first one is the Sethite view, Sethite hypothesis. You guys know what Seth is?
Sons of Seth, yeah, Noah, yeah.
Right, sons of Seth, right? So who's Seth's parents?
Noah.
Try again.
No. Oh, yeah.
Earlier. Come on, everybody. You guys know who's Seth? You guys would all know. I know everybody here would know. But Adam and Eve have 2 children, Cain and Abel. Cain kills one, right? And now we have Cain, the bad line, and Seth, the good line. And all through chapter 5, we got this travel, right? You notice I skipped chapter 5 today because I didn't think you wanted to hear it, but I'm going to talk very, very briefly about it today. Okay, so there's this 2 things, right? Remember, the whole thing since chapter 3, verse 15 is that the serpent would be crushed with the heel. And we're waiting for somebody to come along to crush this serpent. So here comes Cain, and they name him Cain, right? Here he is. They think it's him, but no, what does he do? He kills his brother. So violence is starting. We talked about how that's not really sibling rivalry going on there. It's Israel redone. It's the same story of Israel started over again, okay? That they're fighting, Israel's fighting itself, okay? And then Seth comes up. So now we got these 2 lines, the good line and the bad line. And it's going to travel throughout all of history. Okay, we're going to have these 2, the seed of the serpent and the seed of man, a seed of man. That's what we're going to see. So the major support for this is, here's the view itself. The godly men of Seth, the godly women of Seth get taken by the ungodly men of Cain. Okay, so anyway, the strong people of Cain's tribe take the daughters of the Sethite tribe. Okay, that's what's going on here. They see these hot chicks among their clansmen, their friends, their family, and they take them. And the Nephilim are the byproduct of this union. Okay, we haven't talked about the Nephilim. We're just getting to the sons of God right now. But there's also a question of, are the sons of God also the Nephilim? Right? So it's very, very confusing. So the support for this is chapter 4 and 5. And I've already explained how how Cain and Seth are connected and all that stuff. Early Judaism insisted that this had to be the view. So that gives it a lot of strength.
Doesn't the Dead Sea Scrolls and other manuscripts that precede these texts to the contrary? That it's not, it wouldn't be Sethite or sons of Seth. The sons of God wouldn't be the sons of Seth. It would be.
There are other interpretations with earlier texts.
Right.
Yes, which we haven't gotten to yet.
Right.
But right now we've got the Jewish scholars, and they're saying this is the way you should understand it, because the alternative view is those giant angelic warrior type things. And the Jewish scholars say, no, you cannot interpret it that way. Anybody who translates this as sons of God like that should be cursed. Okay, so now remember, there's no such thing as a Jewish interpretation, as if there's one Jewish interpretation. That's not the way it works either, right? So there's multiple ones, but the main line of Jewish interpretation is that.
What about the Book of Enoch?
We haven't gotten to Enoch yet.
I'm sorry.
That's not Jewish interpretation.
It's not.
No, that's pre. I mean, come on. All of this is Jewish interpretation.
Right,
It's
that's
not
what I'm saying.
rabbinic. It's not rabbinic.
Didn't they use the Book of Enoch at the beginning of the New to write a lot of the New Testament?
Hey.
Inspired, or
Hold on.
inspired. That book inspired.
Inspired, yes. Well, we're going to
Hey,
get to
what's up?
that, hopefully, maybe today.
Okay.
I've got 2 whole pages of Enoch here. I want us to read Enoch together, at least 4 chapters of it. But we're not there yet. This is the other view. This is before we get to Enoch's view of this.
3 over after how many?
So, and it's not Enoch, by the way. It's another person who's pretending to be Enoch. So, but anyway, they would say it's sons of the rulers, or sons of the judges, or sons of the Sethites. That's what's going on there. Pseudo-Philo may imply, Pseudo-Philo is another one of these books. So here's another thing I want to get across to in hermeneutics, is that there's a lot of different books out there other than your Bible that are written around the same time. Okay, so you've got these books that are very well known, just like Joshua was just saying, this book of First Enoch, that everybody's reading. Whether they considered it to be inspired or not isn't the issue. It's still filtered into their subconscious. They knew what it was. Okay, just like books. You don't get. It doesn't matter whether you've read them or not. I mean, Left Behind. Everyone knows the narrative of Left Behind, right? Even if you don't believe in it, like Josh, right, and like me, okay, we think that's from ridiculous eschatology, but it still filters into our brains. Like, it gets there, and we don't even know that there are other alternatives, even if you haven't read the book. You just hear pastors say things about rapture and millennium, and I don't believe in any of those things, raptures or millenniums, right? So, at least not the way you understand them. Okay, that's what I'm saying. So people are reading these books, Pseudo-Philo, Targums. Okay, Targums, I think I wrote that there, but you should definitely know about the Targums because they're super fun. This is just an Aramaic translation. Remember, whenever I say the word translation, what I mean is interpretation. Okay, that is, they're translating it, but they're adding in their own little pieces here and there. They might add a whole other verse somewhere. Let's see here. Oh, Kathy's waiting to enter into the room there, Travis. Let her in. Good man.
Got it.
All right. So Targums talk about this as well. St. Augustine, John Calvin, they hold to the Sethite hypothesis. Okay, John Chrysostom, the golden-mouthed one. Okay, just to give you a little bit of background as to what's happening. Then there's this middle view, this other view that's called the king's view. Okay, and a lot of people just put these together because there's really not a whole lot of difference here. I'm just going to try to distinguish it a little bit. This is just saying, you know how kings work? Kings do whatever the heck they want. They're kings. We're sovereign. We take what we want when we see something, right? This is the story of David. He looked, right? He's standing on the roof of his palace. He looks, he sees, he desires, he takes. Sounds like Adam, by the way, doesn't it? Right? Adam and Eve, they see, they desired, they took, right? They do what they want. Sounds like the judges. They saw, they did what was right in their own eyes. Okay, this is what's going on. This is the whole story of the Bible, right? This is us doing what's right in our own eyes instead of listening to what God is calling us to do. So these are the ancient kings. They take what they want and they violate the marriage rules and the marriage customs and all of that. So like Lamech, remember Lamech? You know what? I need to stop doing that. it takes me too long to figure out, and you don't read it anyway. Lamech is the opposite of kings, which is Melech. Okay, so it's like the one who begins to take what he wants. He's the one who takes 2 wives. Okay, so first polygamist, if you want to say it like that. He takes what he wants. These are these big kings. And they're mentioned in chapter 5, all of these kings, or maybe they are. So Genesis 5, if you back up and you look at the context heading into Genesis 6, Genesis 5 is one long genealogy. And it's boring, right? If you read that, you're reading it just because you feel like, well, there's something sacred here. God put it in the Bible, so I better read it because he's going to be mad at me if I don't. But it's boring as heck. Okay, no one wants to read that. The only reason that you would read that is because of that cool little spot in there that says, and Enoch was no more. And you're like, whoa, this is cool. All right, because what happened to him? He was translated. I don't even know what that means, but he disappeared. He went up to be with God, right? That's the only cool part of this. The rest of this is boring. And these crazy big numbers, the numbers that go on throughout here. So this is not Ancestry.com kind of a genealogy. Okay, if you look back in your history and you know who your dad was and your great grandfather, great grandfather, etc., that's not what's going on in almost any genealogies in the Bible, but especially not this one. And you know that because, I mean, there's some things that you would be able to figure it out pretty quickly, right? First of all, it differs somewhat from other genealogies, but the main thing is, look at the crazy numbers that take place there. Do you see how old these people are?
What's up with that?
What is up with that? That's a great question. What is up with the crazy numbers? You know, Methuselah is 69 years old? Adam is like 939 years old. All these people in like 900s, 500s.
Seth was 800.
Seth is 800 years old. Okay, so what's happening with all of that? This is not mere record keeping. In fact, let me just argue this. The Bible's never mere record keeping. There's always going to be a historiographical intention. That is, they're trying to give you some piece of theology. They're trying to take you somewhere. So each name is ordered in such a way that if you read through these, you can start to find it. Like Enoch is the 7th from Adam, who lives exactly the number of years in the solar calendar, right? That one's an easy one to spot. That's something strange about that. But others of these also have things if you can do your work in ancient Near Eastern king lists. Okay, so, and I know all of you care so much about ancient Near Eastern king lists. So if you read outside of the Bible and you read about certain kings, you're going to find that these numbers are ridiculously small. None of them go over 1,000. Whereas the Assyrian king list, the Mesopotamian king lists, there's pretty normally 28,000-year-old people. Okay. Now, you're not supposed to say these people are 28,000 years old. Okay, that's not what's going on here. This is the way that they did something mystical, something numerical, something they called gematria. I don't know to write down gematria. Right? They do this gematria. They play with the numbers. Numbers have meaning. Every letter in Hebrew has a numerical value and things like that. There's things going on in there. Now, we don't want to take it too ridiculous, right? You don't want to find out that if you count the 4th letter of every word in Genesis 6, 1 through 4, you're going to find out who killed John F. Kennedy. That's not what's going on here. But they are doing some pretty cool things. They are playing with numbers like 7 and 60 and 10. Okay, they have this other way of thinking of things. This, what we call a sexagesimal. Is that the right word? I think sexagesimal system. All right. So if you look at all of these numbers and you put them together, right? Not all the numbers put together, but if you look at each one of the ends of the numbers, you're going to find out that all of them end with 5 numbers. Out of 10, that's strange. That's how many there are. There's only 5 of them that they end with. Maybe 6th one sometimes. But there's certain numbers that it never ends with. You could say that it's a possibility that could just happen, but it's unlikely. It's at least interesting. Okay, and then people have done all these cool things with showing how things work. So as you start to add numbers, like 60 months times 60 months, which I think is 5 years, right? Is that right? 5 plus 5 gives you the 10th one, and then you've got like 700 years in certain ones, and you add you start adding all of these things together, you're going to find, if you do your work, you're going to find that there's something strangely coincidental about how the numbers all work.
7 times 7 jubilees, 49.
Exactly. Remember when we got 7 times 7? Even Jesus does this. How many times? 7 times 70. Okay, it's not supposed to be an actual number. It's trying to give you an idea. It's a symbolic number. Okay, so anyway, I wanted to back up into Genesis chapter 5 because there's a lot of weird theories about, well, before the flood, they used to live thousands or hundreds of years, but now, according to Genesis chapter 1, verse 3, is that right? They only live 120 years. Am I right on that one? Let's see here. For he is mortal, his days will be 120. Okay, so that verse is very strange because nobody stops at 120 after the flood. The numbers keep growing. There's still old people, super old people after the flood. Nobody stops at 120. Okay, and there's different ways of reading the Hebrew here too. So it's not just, it might not be saying that everybody's going to get younger after the flood, but it might be that he's put up with this for 120 years, and at the end of the 120 years, it's going to be done. I'm going to undo the cosmos. Everything is going to return to verse 2, tohu vabohu, right up here, tohu vabohu, which you can't see. It's up, I promise. Okay, it's going to become chaos again. Remember, that's what Genesis 6 is. It's the beginning of God bringing the flood. We're trying to figure out, why would God destroy the world again? Or why would he destroy the world that he just created good? Doesn't make any sense. So what's he going to do? What's the reasons? Well, Adam screwed up and Eve. Oh, Cain screwed up. Lamech screwed up. The sons of God screwed up. Okay, whoever they are. All right, so that's the second possibility here. But the cool thing about Genesis 5 versus all the other ancient Near Eastern king lists is this phraseology. And he died. Every time it says they died. And the promise was that they would live. Right? And then if they failed to mature, then they would die. And he died, and he died, and he died, and he died. But Enoch didn't die for some reason. Something special about Enoch. And other people are going to make up some phenomenal stories about Enoch. So we're getting to that spot. Okay. Moses has the coolest stories ever written about him, but I was thinking about doing that in a few weeks just for fun, just to tell you some of the cool stories about Moses, the Second Temple.
It says in 5:24, it says Enoch walked with God.
Yep.
And he was not. God took him.
God took him, yeah.
It's just,
So everyone else is, and he died, but he was not, for God took it. So, and all scholars have noticed that's different. It's a different language. He's just disappeared. And so Enoch and Elijah are the two that are taken up or translated or somehow brought to God. As if God and Enoch were hanging out, and Enoch was, they're talking and walking and having a good time. And God said, we're a lot closer to my house than we are to your house. Why don't you just come home with me tonight? And that was it, right? So that's the end. It's the nice little anecdote for what happened with Enoch. Okay, the third category of possibilities, which we're going to spend the most time on because it has the most scholarly consensus in regards to it. And it's why I call this what I call it. The giant angelic warrior tribe theory. So we're going to call this the category of gods. So that is, when we say sons of, what we mean is the category of. Like the type of. What are they? Well, they're gods. They're in the realm of the gods. Okay, remember what gods are? Elohim. Okay, that's the plural. This part is the plural, Elohim. This El is just God, singular. This makes it gods. Now, sometimes God is the whole thing. So we've got to figure out, is this talking about sons of God or sons of gods? Okay, we're not going to be able to we're just not going to be able to figure that out simply. Okay, that's going to always be based on context. But
Hey, quick question.
yeah,
Matt Davis asked, how did the king's view relate to Nephilim? Excuse me.
yes. So in the same way that the Sethite hypothesis does, that they are usually, remember, there's not one view, like it has to be always the same, but usually the idea is that the Nephilim are the progeny of these kings and the women that they take. Okay, but it doesn't really explain why the Nephilim are somehow special. Why they're like, they seem to be Gibborim, great warriors, or why they seem to be in the Gigantes, the giants category. Right? So giants exist in every kind of mythology. Right? Read Percy Jackson, read you name it. There's always giants in some story. Okay, so here's our giants story. But let's get back to this here. So sons of God is the category of gods, and you remember Job. We already talked. We saw the sons of God there. This is what I call the divine council motif. We've talked about this. So there's a big round table, and God is the head of this group of people, but there are lots of gods in there, and they would have this conversation. Okay, everyone stop. Okay, we are talking about literature and not reality. Okay, sometimes literature reflects reality, but sometimes it's telling you a story to reflect something else. So we have to be careful. You don't actually want to picture like this is what's happening in reality. There are a bunch of gods sitting around a table. Not at all. Okay, gods don't have forms, right? God is a spirit, doesn't have a body like man, right? This is a concept that can be accommodated to us so we can understand the idea. The King Arthur kind of court, where the king is there, King Arthur's still the king, but it's a round table. So Lancelot gets a pretty big say. And there's a lot of things. Everybody is considered an equal, but one is more equal than others, as Napoleon the Pig would say, right? So this is, nobody? Okay. I don't like not having any kind of reaction. You guys, nobody knows Animal Farm? All right, that's great. Read more. That's all I can say. Okay, so the sons of God are these gods that are in this group, and they have conversations with Yahweh himself. They make up ideas. We're going to go and we're going to do this. We're going to go and do that. Those are the things that are happening. Okay, and they're the ones when he said, "Let us make man in our image." It would be in their image, in the image of the gods. So the B'nai Elim are these assembly of the sons of God, the sons of Asherah, the sons of El, the 70 sons of God that we just talked about in Deuteronomy, that are over all the different nations, etc. Okay, so that's what's going on here. Does everybody understand the three possibilities that we have? Because it's not as if I'm done with this theory here.
Please.
We're going to jump into the Nephilim. Okay, we're going to go into a lot more depth in this particular theory, but I want to make sure we have the three theories lined up. I think it's this third one, okay? But in the end, I'm going to say it really doesn't matter because they're all trying to make the same point. So whichever one you end up hypothesizing is the correct view, we're still getting to the same thing, and that is a culmination of evil and violence that's continuing to get worse, and people choosing their own path so bad that either the kings, who are representatives of God, remember this, right? God is up here, man is here, and the Elohim are here somewhere. But so are the kings. The kings are in between God and man, and the Elohim are in between God and man. They both have this other category in between. They're special. So you could argue that they're literal human kings, or you could argue that they are Elohim. Either way, they are God-like beings that represent God.
In context, what is the ancient manuscript? What do the ancient manuscripts say? And if we're going to be so specific and reading the book in context, what in that context, in that time, what is the author trying to tell us as far as who is it? Is it Elohim, or are they gods, or is it man? Because you're going with this third.
I'm saying I don't know the answer to this. I don't think
You're more drawn towards the third.
I am, because of the preponderance of evidence in the ancient Near East.
Right.
So there are a lot of other books out there that go this direction. So I'm pretty sure, by the way, not just other books in the Bible. So we're going to talk about Jude and Peter. Okay, and we've already seen Psalms talking about this. We've already seen Job talking about this. And this council motif will show up over and over again if you want to look for it. Okay, so, but right now, there's other books like Enoch and Jubilees that are going to be arguing for such things, okay, which we're going to look at. It's all in here. So my next question is, what on earth are the Nephilim?
Giants.
Okay, so it says there, at the same time, where is this? This is verse 4. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. That's an interesting addition, isn't it? The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. But we're about to have in between when the Nephilim existed and when the after is, in between, every single person in the world is destroyed by water. So what happened here? How did they exist over here and over here? Unless you're supposed to understand this flood story quite differently. Or you have some other theories, like the wonderful work done on the book of Noah, on the movie Noah, right? Who's the director of that? Aronofsky, right? Where somebody, Tubal-Cain, I think, hangs on to the boat. He's a stowaway. Or you have these giants that are too tall, that the water doesn't quite kill them off, so they're able to continue. But the point is, even right here in this text, they were there then, and they're there now, is what he's saying. Later on, and then. So remember our timeline, it's being written way after the flood, of course. And they're saying these things are still around, or they were still around at least. Whatever these Nephilim were, they're still around. And so people argue, are the Nephilim the sons of God? And depending on how you read it, you can read that the Nephilim are the actual sons of God, or you can argue that they're completely distinct from the sons of God, or you can argue that maybe there's a connection, like their progeny. They're the children of these sons of God and women. Okay, so if it's sons of God are these angelic council beings, what they've done is they've looked down on earth, they've seen hot chicks, and they want them. Okay, sound pretty normal, guys? Like, right? I mean, let's be honest, this is who we all are most of the time. Okay, hopefully we're able to stop our cravings, but these sons of God were not able to stop their cravings. Because they're sons of God. They can do whatever they want. Or they're kings. They can do whatever they want. That's the whole point. They're not following God's way, the ordered way. They're choosing their own path, and they're taking what they want when they want it. Okay, which is pretty good, like, application for all of this right from the beginning. In fact, that's going to be the end application of this. Okay, so what are they? It's from the Hebrew, Nephal. So Nephal, or NPL or NFL, Nephal, which means lots of different things. That's the problem here. So it usually, Nephal actually just means like to fall, which is cool. It's easy to remember, right? Nephal means to fall. Okay, so Nephal means the fallen ones, or something like that. Depending on how it is done in the Hebrew, there's a Nephal form, there's a passive form. It could mean those who cause others to fall. That is, people who are really good with the sword, maybe. Or it could be the fallen ones themselves. Maybe some of you have seen The Fallen, the Denzel Washington movie. Anybody seen Denzel Washington, The Fallen? It's about a demon that moves from nobody. Nobody's creepy. I don't think that one has anything to do with it.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, good try. Michael Douglas falling down is not it. But everybody now is going to go out and get Denzel Washington's Fall, which is pretty cool. Fallen. Okay, so in the Septuagint, remember that's this thing, 70. The Greek version of the Hebrew Bible is the Septuagint. And then in the Vulgate, which is a Latin version, and in the Samaritan Targum, which is the northern version of Israel, up top. Okay, so they're gonna have their own particular targums. Onkelos and Neophiti, I think, all interpret this. Even Theodotion, which is the Greek version, all interpret this as giants. The Nephal are the giant ones. Symmachus is another Greek version. Symmachus says violent ones, should be translated here. Aquila says the fallen ones were the ones that are falling upon their enemies. That's what's going on. And it tells us right here in the text that the Nephilim were the heroes of old, the men of renown. Okay, that's just a word, Gibborim. Gibborim. Probably two B's because it's kind of Dutch. Gibborim, the warriors. Okay, it's not a bad word. It's a fine word. To be a Gibborim back then is a good thing. It might even mean like a man of valor, man of worth, somebody who can fight and take care of himself. Okay, so Genesis 6 does not tell us what the connection is between the Nephilim and the sons of God, right? It just says that they were on the earth in those days. So we've got the sons of God coming down, marrying the daughters of women. The daughters of men, because they were beautiful. And it says they married. It's really and they took, but it probably means married. And then verse 4, they were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards when the sons of God went into the daughters of men. It's like they were there at the same time that this was all happening. So it doesn't actually connect them and say that they're the progeny. They were the heroes of old, the men of renown. But so many stories have been about there being progeny here, about these being, the Nephilim being the results of this, this connection between the sons of God and the sons of man, or the daughters of men. So, other places we find this. By the way, what time is it? I need to keep up on that, right? What time we got, anybody?
8:57.
Oh my,
Yeah,
so I'm
it's
supposed to be wrapping up. Okay. Yeah, well, maybe this is a good place to wrap up. I mean, I know you wanted to get to those cool giant pictures on the other side, so you have to save that. So we'll do that next week or the week after. And yeah, so here's where we're going to go. Let me just get you excited about the end, I hope. I want us to try to answer who these people are. Okay, I don't think you're going to come up with it. That's okay. We're going to try and do that. Does it matter who they are? Is it really going to make a difference? I've already argued. I'm not sure it does. And what is this teaching if it is a second millennium text? That is, if it's written by Moses, for instance. What? Yeah. You on the phone?
She's trying to turn it off.
Okay. What does it matter? If it's a second millennium text written by Moses, or if it's a J source written in, I don't know, 950 BC, or what if it's written in 400 BC? What's the story that it's trying to tell? Why has somebody put this freaky, weird story in between perfectly normal stories about, bloodshed and violence and a flood? Like, what's going on with this? Would the text continue just fine without it? Why did somebody insert these 4 verses here? It's got to be doing something for us. And I want to know, how does this point to Jesus? Or does it? Is there something about Jesus here? You're not going to see it directly, but are there ways that you can think about it? Like, for instance, we're talking about the sons of God, right? I mean, he's called a son of God. Is there any kind of connection there? Is it possible that he is the progeny of, I don't know, a son, one of the category of the gods coming and mating with human women? Because that's kind of what the New Testament talks about, doesn't it? I mean, is this not the Holy Spirit comes over Mary, and then what is Jesus if not a God-man?
Right.
Right? Is that not what these are, maybe?
Are these
What's
Yahweh's
happening?
enemies? Are these?
Yeah, these seem to be bad guys.
Right.
So maybe he's the good side of this? This is what I want to talk about with you guys when I get the volume back, because I think this would be a great discussion. And if this culminates with the church, like it doesn't stop with Jesus, right? It keeps going. Dr. Dalrymple is fond of saying that. It doesn't stop there. I think I've been saying that just as long as him, but he tells me that every time we talk. It's about the church, right? If the church is doing something, what are we supposed to do with this verse? Do we care? So anyway, that's where we're getting. Anybody have thoughts, questions about where we're at right now? Freaked out about these giant beings? Remember, you've got basically, I guess you could probably talk because Travis can hear you. I just can't hear you. He can hear. He can talk to me.
You can also just promise to read the text in the thread.
Yeah, you could promise to read. I could just tell them to read that. Is that what you're saying?
No, you could read it if they send you a message on the screen.
That's true. I could try to do that if I can. Oh yeah. Well, there's a lot of chats on here. Have you been answering all of them? I see 11.
Yes.
11 in my chat here. Okay, mostly from you. Good. How did the kings relate to? Adam and Eve. Good job, Davin. I don't know what you were answering, but well done. Yeah. Any thoughts, anyone? Freaked out? Convinced that it's the kings, the Sethite view, or the other?
To what extent does the whole Nephilim thing matter? Like, do you think they were real? I can't really buy into the idea that they were a real thing.
Okay, so now the question is, are the Nephilim, I never wrote Nephal, are the Nephilim, right? Are they real? Are they real creatures? Right? So this is going to be another big question. See it? Okay, so there's a scholar out there that so many people have asked me this week. His name is Michael Heiser, and he has a book called Unseen Realm, where he has done major work into all of this. I have not read his book. I know Mike, he's a great scholar. It's very important to listen to what he has to say. I don't think he's getting it. This is what Josh is, I think, maybe saying similar things here. His argument is that these are actual beings in the cosmos that we still see today.
In Enoch, we have Mount Hermon, right?
Yes.
And this is, he wrote another book called Reversing Hermon, and it talks about the Nephilim, and talks about how it pertains to Jesus, and anyways.
Yeah. So yeah, so you can read his stuff, and it's worthwhile. He's not some no-name scholar. He's out there in the evangelical world and doing good stuff. But remember, the main thing that I wanted to say right when I started off, right, was this is literature. What is the text trying to do? So Michael Heiser will go so far as to say, which some of you might enjoy this kind of idea, that these beings are still out there today, right, in the demonic world. Okay. In fact, we're going to get to that. The whole idea of a demigod comes from daimonion, which is demon. So a half god, half man, something like that, a demon. And so that's perfectly accurate. That's true. That these Nephal, these fallen ones, might be the fallen demons, and they're still in the world today, and we catch glimpses of them sometimes. And you might see them, and we just call them UFOs. Okay, you just see them in the world because sometimes you can see through that veil. And I mean, I get that. I think sometimes we do see through the veil. I don't know that we're really seeing demons and angels and things like that, but we can have that debate.
If we're believing a man was risen from the dead, why can't we believe in giants and the Nephilim?
Yeah.
I don't see why not.
Okay, so a similar question would be, we believe that Jesus rose from the dead. Why can't we believe a snake talks? Right? We can. Can God do that? For sure. Do those things really exist? Yeah, parrots talk. No, not really, but they actually just mimic, right? But I mean, if that can't, so it's what we're trying to do though is be fair to the text. We're not asking what God can do.
Right.
Right? So we could say, God can create the world in 7 literal days, and he could have created it 10,000 years ago, right? Absolutely he could have. What I'm asking is that what the text is trying to get across to us? I don't think that's what the text is trying to get across to us right here.
To get the Bible to do something it's not meaning to do?
That's right.
Yeah.
I want the Bible, I want to say, how's the Bible behaving? What is it asking me to think? Not just to say, what can it be asking me to think? Like, what is it actually doing for the authors who are writing this and for the people who are listening to it?
What Rob has?
What Rob has to say about it? Yeah, I wish he could talk, but he can't. He's gonna have to come in later on. I mean, he can, but he's probably cleaning his garage or something, packing boxes. He's leaving soon.
Are these ideas further developed in Second Temple period? Isn't that where heaven, hell, angels, demons kind of really start to develop?
Absolutely, yes. That's brilliant, for sure. I didn't say that Josh's stuff is brilliant, unless he's the one talking right now. He's talking, but his was brilliant too. But yes, that's exactly what's going on. This Second Temple period, that's Jubilees. That's First Enoch. That's Jude. That's Peter, right? We haven't gotten to those yet. That was where I was going to get to, but I did all this other stuff. I just kept going. We're going to get there next week. Okay, so the Second Temple is going to bring some of this out. So yeah, the angels, the idea of angels way back here is very, very limited. We don't have very many uses of the word angels, malakim. Okay, that's these messenger type creatures. We do have cherubim, right? And seraphim, and we've talked about those before. These flying serpent deities, right? That kind of stuff, okay? And these are all maybe in the sons of God category. Sons of gods. So, but angels, to get a more developed angelology or an actual study of angels, is going to come at several hundred years after this. Okay, it's developing. They're going to keep going with this. Remember, I said before, there's no Satan in the Old Testament. Okay, not that the word Satan doesn't show up there, but Satan, the creature that you understand from the New Testament, doesn't exist in the Old Testament. Now, the creature might actually exist, but in their minds, they don't have a concept of one who has fought against God and lost and is now wreaking havoc on the world. They don't call that person the Satan. Okay, maybe Mephistopheles or something like that, but usually it's these other gods, these gods of Canaan. Okay, the Rephaim or the who are the other great god? Baal, right? Different ones like that. Melech. Okay.
So would Jesus have been aware of or known about heaven/hell, angels/demons that we have today?
Yes, Jesus would be aware of all of those things. He would have understood hell differently than you do, almost definitely. For him, hell is this city dump. The trash and the fires come up, and it's not. It may very well not be some eternal judgment, tormental. We're not getting into the heaven question right now, but Jesus probably understood all of the categories that you have differently than you understand. So his concept of heaven would have been quite different, probably. Okay, the Old Testament doesn't have any view of an afterlife in that sense. It's working towards something. There's a few things that seem like there's something, but it's not real heavy. And demons and angels, for sure, right? He talks about both of those things. He has conversations with demons, cast them out. So his understanding would have been similar to our current understanding, where a demon possesses somebody and he can move them out. You have to ask questions of whether that's a psychological understanding or whether that's a real understanding. Like, did he really think that he was casting out demons, or was he casting out epileptic seizures? Right? Was it a psychological thing that was going on? I'm not going to make that argument. I want to deal with the literature. Okay? But certainly in their time, they would have seen that there were some sort of beings that grabbed hold of people and made them do things.
So the story of David and Goliath, you have the Nephilim, or God's people,
Yes.
Defeating the Nephilim. You also have that in the Messiah. The Messiah, it's not just limited to redemption and us, but also there's, I think it's layered. And I'll have to do some research before I can even talk about it, because I don't want to speak out of pocket or out of that. But I feel like there's some other redemption going on with the Messiah that has to do with these
Conquering the dark forces, the fall. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely in the text that they're trying to get across, that he's conquering the Nephal, just as David conquered the Nephal, the fallen ones, the Philistines. So in fact, you might argue that the whole conquest, the Joshua narratives, were to get rid of the Nephilim.
What's Joshua's
giants?
What's the name of Josh's book? Can he?
He hasn't written the book. He was kidding.
Okay, he's kidding. Okay, all right. Not yet. Joshua.
Josh, shut up. See, you're just messing with people. Stop listening.
Travis.
Is
Travis laughing?
He and I have been talking.
I've got 4 books.
What's up, dude?
Yeah.
But I've also been writing a book with Rob and Karen and pretty much every Brad.
What about Travis? Have you talked about writing a book with
No,
Travis?
I don't think Travis and I have talked about writing a book, but yeah, one day we're gonna.
He seems to be your side.
He's certainly been convincing me to do stuff here. All right, is that it, Travis? I can't hear him.
There were a couple other comments from Josh, but I don't think they were really questions. He just said, sorry, just pointing out where Jesus was historically and all of this. The Nephilim seemed like another excuse to hate on the Canaanites. And Dr. Blaze said that's interesting.
Wait. Another excuse to hang out with the Canaanites?
To hate.
Oh, yeah. Well, especially if you follow that Canaanite hypothesis, the Sethite Canaanite thing, then yeah, this is another reason to hate the people who live in the place they're conquering. Right? So if you argue that this is a conquest narrative, then this is the reason that they would do that, because they're the product of evil demons who have come down and had sex with women. They've left their proper abode, Jude will say. So we need to get rid of them in the conquest narrative. or even as late as David, right? Why do you get rid of the giants in the land? Why is Goliath such a bad guy? Because he's one of these. He's one of these liminal creatures. These creatures that are between spirit and man. They're demonic or angelic creatures of some kind. We need to get rid of them. So, and yeah, if you keep going, what's the reason for getting rid of them later than that?
It's a lot of information.
It's a lot of information, yeah. And a lot more coming, trust me. When you read Enoch, you're going to get blown away. So if you didn't get the notes and you're just trying to follow along, get them so you can at least read. I think I printed 4 chapters of Enoch. I printed a little bit of chapter 1 just to give you an intro and then a whole bunch more. I printed Jubilees for you, just chapter 5. So you could just read it yourself and be a part. We'll read it together too, so don't worry about doing any homework. It's not a homework class. All right, that's it. Hopefully technologically I'll be better next week. I apologize for not being able to listen to any of you.